I do not own the rights to this music. Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, April the 26th, 2026. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. In the Spring 2026 lesson series, we are discussing the social challenges that Christians have historically faced in the practice of their Christian faith in fulfilling their obligation to neighbors, family, community, and to God. The title of our ninth lesson comes from Unit 2 of the Spring 2026 lesson series, and is titled Love That Shapes Society, or that godly love that embodies everything that we do and is internalized on our heart, and it's the guiding principle that we use within our life, and it transcends all of the other laws. The key verse comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 through 7, and they read as follows: These words I am commanding you today are to be upon your hearts, and you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you are at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. So the love of God should reflect a constant presence in our life, in how we see the world and how we act in the world. The title of today's lesson, Love That Shapes Society, comes from the book of Deuteronomy and Matthew. The book of Deuteronomy is a repetition of the law, and is also referred to as the second law, and is a continuation of the story of Abraham and God's covenant promise to make his descendants into a great nation. Now, Abraham's descendants have now greatly increased in numbers and have been delivered from bondage in Egypt under the protection and direction of God through the leadership of Moses. And Moses addresses the Israelites on their covenant relationship with God as they prepare to cross over into the promised land of Canaan. Moses reminds Israel that the Lord himself gave the commands, statutes, and ordinances which they are to obey in order to have the continued blessings and prosperity as promised in the covenant with Abraham. And in Matthew, Jesus responds to the Pharisees on the practical legal application of divorce under the law or the commandments, which brings us to today's lesson. There are three summary lesson points for today. Promise and obedience work together to fulfill God's will, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 3 through 6. Religious education happens constantly, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 7 through 9. And Jesus on divorce from Matthew chapter 19, verse 3 through 9. The passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words of faith, wisdom, hear, and the word. And we know that the faith is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence in God. It is the faith of Moses to remind Israel to remain faithful to God and God's commandments as they entered the promised land in today's lesson. And wisdom is the ability to apply experience, knowledge, and understanding to produce good judgment. It is wisdom to follow God's statutes and commandments and to teach them to our children in today's lesson. And hear means to listen attentively to heed. It is Moses reminding the children of Israel to keep God's commandments seriously and to teach them to their children in today's lesson. And the word is the scriptures that are inspired by the Holy Spirit that communicate God's laws, will, and prophecy as embodied by Jesus Christ. And the word is to follow God's greatest commandment to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength in all that you do in today's lesson. Our first summary point is promise and obedience work together to fulfill God's will, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 3 through 6. In these passages, Moses reminds Israel of their responsibility to the promise or the covenant promise. And he says to them, Hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe so that you may prosper, and multiply greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord has promised your father. And he says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, and with all your soul. In today's lesson, it says, These words I'm commanding you today are to be up on your heart. So we are to internalize our love of God within our heart and be the guiding principles as we apply them in our life. Our second summary point is religious education happens constantly, and it says that you shall teach them diligently to your children. These are the commandments and statutes of God, and you're to speak of them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands, and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So they should be the guiding principles as we enter life, as we see life, and as we live life. That the love of God is and commandments, and keeping the commandments of God is love. And that's what we should teach our kids. That love of God is to keep his commandments and statutes. The third and final summary point is Jesus on divorce, and that's from Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 through 9. And these passages, Jesus teaches divorce in response to a trick question from the Pharisees on the application of the law. And the Pharisees test Jesus first. They ask, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason, as it was allowed under Moses? Jesus' reply is that you should have you not read that at the beginning of creation that God made them male and female, he says, and for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two becomes one flesh. So they no longer are one, but one flesh. He said, therefore God has joined together, let no one separate. And the trap becomes, the Pharisees want to know, well, then why did Moses allow this? And Jesus said, Moses commanded that a man be permitted to divorce his wives because the hearts of man was hard, and they were divorcing the women for any particular reason that they disliked. He says, but it was not the way from the beginning, according to Jesus. And he says that, I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And according to Jesus, marriage is a holy sacrament with God and with the other individual, and it is based on the love of God as embodied in his creation and his commandments. And absent adultery, we are to follow God's commandments. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, April the 26th, 2026. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother